Hello everyone. So I figured I'd make a little video on how to make a moss pole for you guys today. So a moss pole, if I can show you here, we got my philodendron pink princess right here, but this plant, it likes to climb up things, which there's a lot of plants that are climbing plants or considered climbing plants. A lot of your monsteras, of course, your pothos, things of that nature. So a plant like this, when it's able to attach to something in the natural habitat, it would be like a tree or a rock face or something. But here we want to try and simulate something for the plant to climb up. And what that does is the plant will put out aerial roots. So I'll show you here. These are aerial roots here, if you can see that, kinda. And this one is actually going down into the soil. But if you get it on a moss pole, a lot of times it'll grow the roots into the moss pole. And what that does is it lets the plant use less energy to hold itself up, I guess you could say. And it puts that energy into creating bigger, healthier, more beautiful leaves, which is really what we mostly want, right? Now, with a lot of pothos and stuff, you know, some people like those to hang. They like their plants hanging. Me, I usually prefer to have them go upwards. It just helps a little bit with showing them off, you know, like where I place them in my house and stuff. It's easier to have them go up than down and kind of everywhere. That's what this video is going to be. So looking at what supplies we need to do this, you need to get yourself some sphagnum moss. Long fibered would be best, just so it'll hold inside of the moss pole a little bit better, hold on to itself, hold on to the other moss and all that. I like to get just this regular old fencing you can get at really any kind of big box store, Home Depot, Menards, stuff like that. This stuff's great because you can cut it down to whatever size pole you need, even if you want a big giant one, and just kind of roll it up and fill it with moss. So that's what we're going to do. You also need to get, there's a couple ways to do it, but I like using just the little cable ties. They're just little zip ties pretty much. And I use those to kind of attach the pole to itself, like when I roll it around, which I'll show you guys that. So, and then you also, when you first make it, you want to get some of this felt, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like Velcro. And you kind of wrap it around your plant and the pole just to show it like, hey, you're supposed to lean up against this, and then the plant eventually will realize, oh, I can put some aerial roots into this and that. So that's just for the beginning when you want to get it attached and everything to the pole. And of course the big bowl, so you can get all your sphagnum moss in there. We need to wet it down and all that stuff, so we'll get going with the steps next. All right, so step one, we have our bowl here filled with our sphagnum moss. It's very dry, long, fibrous stuff. Okay, and we're just gonna pretty much douse it with water here. You don't really have to worry about using too much water because we're gonna wring it out at the end before we actually put it in the pole. Okay. So we're just gonna mix that all up, get it all saturated, squish it down, bring it back up. So now we have nice and saturated sphagnum moss here to use. Now for our second step, we want to take our fencing here, and you want to roll out enough here, and you want this to be able to roll over onto itself and still have a good kind of circumference there that you can fill it with moss, right? So you kind of want to look and see where you're at, about right here. Follow that back over, and that's how much you're going to want to cut out of this fence. Now, depending on the size you want, you can, you know, cut down here and then just cut it off if you want a little shorter one. A lot of my plants are bigger right now, so I'm just going to do a nice tall moss pole the whole length of this. So just cut it all the way down. So now we have our cage for our moss pole cut out here. And now all we want to do is take our sphagnum moss here. You're going to grab out a nice handful. You're going to wring it out so it's not dripping everywhere. And we're just going to lay it all down the center of this pole. Now you want to try and get things even as possible here, so you don't have real big bumps or anything like that going through. You have a nice even moss pole the whole way. Sometimes you might find big sticks in your sphagnum moss. Get rid of those. You don't want those in there. Bring that out. Beautiful. You're gonna make a mess. Luckily I have wood floors, so vacuuming is pretty easy there. If you're on carpet, you might want to lay out a little something, trash bag or something, just so you don't make too much of a mess. So then you kind of just want to see where you're at there. See if you need to fill it a little bit more. You want it to be decently full. You know, you don't want there to be tons of space in there. But also you don't want it so jam-packed that it's hard for the roots to even get in there. But like I said before, it's a real easy process. It's kind of foolproof. It's kind of hard to really mess it up there. Now that I got my cage here filled with my damp sphagnum moss, what you're just gonna do is simply kind of roll this over. If you lose stuff, it's okay. You can shove it in there after. Just kind of find a good spot that you can kind of tell the whole way through kind of how much you're rolling it in. So I usually pick one of these squares, kind of shove the excess through there, and then you're going to take your little zip tie, cable tie, start on one end, get it through there, come on back, and zip tie it. If I can get it in there. There we go. Alright. And we tighten that up. So all this excess of the zip ties we'll just cut off later. So pretty much what you're going to do is just follow the whole way down, putting zip ties in. And as you go, it will slowly take its form of a circular moss pole. Alright, so as you can see, after I got the moss pole wrapped around, these little zip ties just holding it together the whole way down, and then all you need to do is just cut off the excess of all the zip ties here. There we are. One moss pole. So what plant are we going to put on the moss pole today? I have this very leggy Monstera adansonii, or Swiss cheese Monstera, if you will, that just has two very long vines, pretty much. So what I want to do is I want to make this plant more full, and I want to make bigger, stronger leaves. This wasn't on a moss pole, so as you can see, it just got long and just keeps making very small little leaves as it goes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop this guy up. I'm going to put the moss pole in my pot, obviously, and then take probably down here somewhere, give it a chop, and just get those attached to the pole. So then as that grows, it'll be just a bigger, stronger plant. And then I'll have a bunch of propagations that I can also use for future plants, or I can put into this pot to make it fuller, anything I really want to do. So we're going to need to take our moss pole and bury it into this pot, so it's going to be standing. Okay. Now you can get like garden stakes or something, attach them to your moss pole, and then kind of set them in, so this will just sit on top. Really, either way, it doesn't really matter whichever way you want to do it. I'm just going to bury this one inside of my pot though. So I'm just going to make a hole and shove this down in there enough so it'll support itself. Okay, so I've got a nice little hole kind of dug on this side. And all I'm going to do is just slide my moss pole down in that hole there. Making sure to get it filled in well, packed down as best you can. Just so it's not going to fall over tip over, fall out, destroy your plant. You don't want that. Packed in there good. Alright, that's pretty sturdy in there. Feel okay about that. When I water it too, it'll kind of help the soil all kind of compact down and everything as well. Now that our moss pole is attached, you want to take our felt here. You want to make sure you get a long enough piece that it can wrap around the whole thing there. Rip it off of there. So then we're going to take our long vine here, and I'm just going to start with a small wrap around. And then let's attach it about right there. As you can see, that'll hold that up there. And then this vine as well. This one we'll wrap around the other way a little bit. Now you can kind of do this however you want. Make it so it wants to attach to that moss pole there. So I'll wrap that one there. Okay. And what I'll do, these leaves aren't too bad. You want to make sure that you leave a good node here that it can continue, growing well out of. So I'm going to just take a little chop right there. So now this is much shorter, as you can see. And then this one here is just so leggy. I guess I will just take it right about here. Okay. So now I have tons of vines here that I can make lots of little plants with. Each one of these, each one of these little nodes or growth points here, you can see there's a little tiny aerial root coming out of there. And so that's what's actually going to grow into the moss pole on the existing, the stuff I left here. But these ones here, I can literally chop this pretty much on both sides right here, and that's going to produce another plant if I just get it in some water, some perlite, anything like that. I'm sure we'll get some propagation videos going soon. Okay, so there we have it. We got our moss pole up in our pot. We got our plant attached to it with our felt Velcro there, and now it's just kind of a waiting game. I'm expecting this plant to kind of really take off. I know it looks a little bit sad now. I mean, I took a lot of the plant off of it, but that gives me more opportunities to make more plants with all of this vine that I have of this plant here. And so this guy, I expect it to kind of blow up here over the summer and that. I mean, spring's coming soon, and it'll look much better once it kind of realizes it has this moss pole to grow up, and it won't get so leggy and viney like it did because I didn't have a moss pole on it. And also, I can take these propagations, I can take all of this vine that I got here, and I can make more plants. And once I get them rooted in that, I can plant them in this pot and make it a fuller pot if I want, or just make new plants. That's what's fun about doing plants, right? You get to do lots of fun stuff, lots of different things. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. A little tutorial on how to make your own moss poles.